Hey everyone, welcome to episode 67 of the Ceres podcast. In this episode, I talked to Adrian Bartlett, one of the founders of the Crabstock Boys. He's also an ambassador of Seafish UK, love British seafood. He's partnered with Andy's Kitchen. Really, there's a lot to say. He's just got so many roles, but he's basically one of the biggest proponents of British seafood, but most especially crabs. That's what he's really passionate about. In this episode, we talk about all things relating to crabs, crab fishing, all sort of fishing, the fish that we've got in the waters in the UK. COVID's been extremely tough on the fishermen and fish processors. One thing I found really interesting is how in the UK we rely so much on the big five species. And I genuinely think it's a good time for us all to start introducing all these great species from around the British waters. I think if we can explain it right to our customers, they might appreciate it too. If you want to know more about what we do, head over to theworldofceres.com, where you can learn about our product range but read some of our articles. This week we've added articles to help you maximise all the data you are getting from your new click and collect apps. Hopefully they help you retain some of the new customers or even keep the same customers that you hopefully got out of this. We also spoke to Tony Postlethwaite from Priory Fish Bar and see how he's been getting on with our product since opening nearly 2 years ago. And we caught up with Simon Walsh from Longsands Fish Kitchen, and he told us about the great menu items he's been adding to his menu with his team by using the Ceres fish cake mix. Anyway, on to the episode with Adrian Bartlett. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Adrian. Welcome to the Ceres podcast.
Yeah, hi, Stelios. How are you?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. I'm glad that it's a bit cooler today. A nice bit of cool air.
Yeah. There's a bit of an Atlantic low coming in now to just change the weather around a little bit. But with the winds, there's no doubt it's going to stir up our oceans for more good fish and shellfish to be landed.
Oh, that's good news. Hopefully. So, tell us a little bit about what you do. You're one of the duo at the Crabstock Boys. You spent many years working at Brixham Crab Company. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Well, basically, I was kind of a little bit of a history of me. I first stepped on a boat in the 1970s out of Paynton Harbour with Ernie Lane on a boat called the Shirley Betty. Probably 8 or 9 years of age. And the first time I saw a crab, I was amazed by it. I was too scared to touch it, but I was amazed by it. And then that just led on to one thing, and my cousin Nick Bright, he kind of got a first dinghy and started hauling pots. So come the mid 80s, I was at sea, and kind of fell in love with the industry, Stelios, basically, and the whole aspect about fishermen and what we catch, the last of the hunters, I suppose. Linking into, me and Andy hunting as the Crabstock Boys, it kind of started back in 2011 when traditionally we used to catch crab, stick it in a lorry, the lorry went to Europe, or we used to land in Europe, we used to land in France all the time. The French was buying all of our crab at times to ship through Spain and Portugal. Our merchant at the time could handle 100 tons a week of crab going into Europe. This is a live market. And then we used to get paid to come home, sort the boat out and go out because we was working the mid-channel boxes with the tides. But back in 2011, Nick, my cousin, come up with an idea that we sell direct to restaurants and the trade in the UK. And we started the really interesting crab company. And that's when my kind of passion and juices started flowing with shellfish and the consumers of the UK, but through professional chefs. And we started off with one customer in 2011, and by mid-2012, we had 80, 90 customers because we could link the boat, the crab, the lobsters, and other shellfish that was dealing with to the skippers, the owners in the areas of where it was all being caught, and it was really, really popular. But then I kind of understood there was a naivety even in the hospitality industry towards our product. And so we went down the training route. But what came out of it was one festival in 2012 up in Oxford. I got invited there under one chef that we used to deal with, Carson Hill, at the Chilwell Boathouse. And he said to me, "Can you come up on stage with me on the Sunday?" It was over an August bank holiday. Pick a crab and I'll do a recipe. And I went, "Well, I've never done it before." And he said, "Right, okay." And then I prepped myself. But in the meantime, over the 3 days, we set up the really interesting crab stand and done crab sandwiches. The whole team was there. And out of 100 food stalls, apart from one oyster company, we was the only person there doing seafood. We just could not keep up with the demand, Stelios, with crab sandwiches, crab legs, and it was amazing. But come the Sunday, he never turned up. He just didn't turn up. So the organizer said to me, "Can you go up on stage and do what you do?" And I said, "I've never done it before." And I was saying I was nervous was an understatement, because I followed Raymond Blanc, and there were 600 or 700 people in this marquee. And Beverly Glock was looking after the stage, and I said, "Look, if I get into trouble, can you bring the wine guy out? Because I've never done it before." It is on YouTube. We filmed it. I stood up on stage. Saying I wasn't nervous was an understatement. But within 5 minutes, I thought, well, I know about this crab. I know where it comes from. I know how to cook it. I know how to pick it, and I know how to enjoy it. And that's when the journey started, basically. I had a business card thrust in my hand, and I cannot remember meeting Andy Hunting. And we was going through all the business cards for restaurants and chefs. And I thought, right, I'm going to start my own seafood festival up. So I phoned Andy a couple of months later, and he come on board straight away. And he's got one of the biggest food blogs in the UK, is Andy's Kitchen, which came out of his love of food after his mother died. And it's still one of the biggest food blogs probably in Europe now. And we started up Crabstock festivals, and we put it in the middle of the Cotswolds over 2 days, one weekend in April, and we had 3,500 people turn up. Wow. So we was onto something then, Stelios.
Yeah, definitely. So go on.
No. Just saying that led into 5 festivals from the Cotswolds to Northampton. But people couldn't understand. We was trying to get sponsorship in and money in. And, you know, when we did move to Northampton, we was getting 5,000 to 8,000 people in over the weekend. But we couldn't get the money in to support it because it was a free festival. I don't believe you should charge. I understand people charging at festivals because they need to keep the festivals going. But for me, to try to get the public to eat more seafood, I thought I can't charge the public to come and try our wonderful seafood. They need to have this opportunity to try it. And loads of things have linked out from there. As the Crabstock Boys, our unique pop-up restaurant, Crabstock and Two Smoking Lobsters. And we're 9 years down, and what me and Andy's been saying for 8 or 9 years has come to light through this COVID-19 problem.
So if we start on one of the interesting things that you mentioned is that at the events, people go crazy for crab.
Yes.
Yet you don't really see crab in supermarkets unless it's tinned. You know, you might see it, you know, dressed in the posher supermarkets. Consumers don't really eat crab at home. Unless, again, you're near the coast or you've got a good supermarket or a good fishmongers near you. Where do you think that divide is? Why is it that people are willing to have it at, you know, at an event or a restaurant or something, but then not eat it more at home?
Well, maybe this is what I can't put my finger on and nail that question down. We've got the most diverse fishing waters probably in the Northern Hemisphere, if not the world. There's more species of fish and shellfish swimming and crawling around our waters than any other country. And that's why Europe wants our waters. But I don't get political. It is what it is. Yes, let's mention the word Brexit, let's get out. But going back to, which will happen in December the 31st, which is still happening, but the fishing side of it all will be a 5-year process to get our limits back. But getting back to the crab and why people don't eat it, they love it, they come to us, they see it being picked or it's in a pot and it's easy, it's a convenience food. A dressed crab is a convenience food.
Yeah.
And then they can go away and enjoy it. And I don't like the word education, because I don't think we need to educate the UK public. We just need to make them aware that if you went to your local fishmonger, or going back 6 months, supermarket fish counters, but they won't deal with live. But most supermarkets now have scrapped the fish counters throughout the UK, which is a shame. They should be opening up the fish counters and getting the flow of fish coming through whilst this COVID-19 is going on, but they're not. So it's a little bit more difficult at the moment, but we'll get on a little bit later on how we can source it. And I think people are just a little bit concerned of, how to deal with that crab. But if they can go to a festival or they can go to the coast, social distancing must be applied. It's a little bit nightmarish on the coast at the moment, people not following it. But when we do get back to a little bit normality, don't go for a burger, don't go for some fried chicken, go and find your local cockle hut, whelk hut, restaurant, and go and support the fishing industry, because we need to start moving our produce onto UK shores within 100 yards and into 70 miles into the centre of the UK.
So, Adrian, you say, people should eat more locally. How can you force them, or at least encourage them, let's say, to change those habits?
Well, one thing is nutrition and health benefits. We're all doing less exercise now, and fish and shellfish, it's got so many benefits, even down to seaweeds. Seaweeds is like a superfood now, and there's quite a few companies that's harvesting and doing various different products with seaweed. And it's the same with the fish and shellfish. It's so good for you, even down to zinc and copper out of crab is all good for you. So I would have thought the first thing to try to get across, it's healthy, it's good for you. A lot of the sea's not organic. A few people might say it is, but it's not, because obviously of plastic pollution and other activities that's going on at sea. But we've got some of the biggest tidal ranges and falls around the UK and Ireland, in Northern Ireland, and the waters are constantly changing. So if you go down, probably the simplest way to find seafood is to find your mussel farms, your oyster farms, cockles and clam farms. Well, the cockles and clams are probably more harvested, but they're purified, they're ready to eat. And splash of white wine, an onion, chive, a little bit of cream, and you've got a meal in 3 or 4 minutes. The other thing with trying fish and shellfish, if you go onto any social media platform now, or type in any search bar, local fishmonger, fish to your door, the industry's had to adapt, and they will send it to you prepped, so you haven't got to worry about bones. I think now it's the best way to try fish for at least 1 meal a week, Stelios, because you can go. I'm not going to mention one company, because there's loads of companies out there at the moment. It won't be fair promoting one company, but just search, and they will deliver a box to you overnight. All your fish is backpacked. It's all kept at the correct temperature with gel packs, and basically just go and experiment. Andy even come up with, years ago, a cycle with your dishwasher will cook a piece of fish. Wrap it up. You don't want it tasting of fairy liquid bulbs or whatever you put in your dishwasher, but if you wrap it up and do a papillote, you can cook it on one cycle. So how cool is that? Your plates are get cleaned and you're doing your dinner. It's not complicated to cook fish or shellfish. It's not complicated at all. And then there's massive benefits.
I think one of the biggest thing that probably scares consumers about fish is that there's a fine line between cooked and dry, and I think that probably puts people off, because I think people do eat fish when they go to restaurants, so they're not afraid of eating it out and about. Maybe it's just that they don't want to prepare it themselves, and when you do prepare seafood at home, if you've not got good extraction, it will linger for a little bit. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why people just don't do it at home.
Well, we can answer that one. Fish doesn't smell. Fresh fish doesn't smell. Okay, if you've gone and bought a piece of fish and it's smelling, don't cook it. It's deteriorating. So maybe in the past, I've always said when me and Andy's up on stage, it's the 3 W's: is where it was caught, when it was caught, and who cooked it. Just remember that. So if you go to a fishmonger, well, when was it caught? Well, it was caught Friday. Well, by who? Well, it was caught by, Jack Smith, and where? Brixham. So ask the 3 W's. If they can answer it, don't buy it. So with cooking, it should just have the smell of the flavours that you're kind of put into it. Now, you're right. There is a fine line between a piece of, say that we pick on cod. Everybody knows the cod. In your pan frying it, you can just watch the heat go through the fish, and you want to probably treat it like a little bit of steak. When the proteins are broken down in that piece of cod, that's when it's cooked, and just rest it on a piece of steak as well. So, and don't forget that the highest consumers of fish in the whole world is sushi. Every fish is sushi grade to start with. And if you want to understand more, I'm an ambassador for Seafish. I'm also an accredited trainer for Seafish. If people want to go to the Seafish Authority website and look up the Torrey scale, which is TORRY, it's a QIM. On there is a list of every fish, what it should look like, fresh, filleted, cooked, what it should taste like, and what should taste like raw or cooked. And that's a very good indication if you're a professional chef out there and you don't know, and you think your supply of fish is not that good, or a household, just look on that site there, and that will give you an indication of what that fish should taste like cooked. And the problem that the questions that we get asked, me and Andy, all the time is, the problem is if, I'm not picking on supermarkets, but all I'm saying is if you're going to sell a product, do it correctly. No, I'm not going to go down there. But
what would give us an example? What would they do that's not correct in terms of crab? Keep it specific.
Well, with crab, you probably won't see, the only crab that you'll probably get on a supermarket is probably a pate or something like that. They certainly won't be selling fresh crab. It's like, the crab meat that we produced is picked and shipped the same day. With the supermarket supply chain, if they buy a piece of fish off one of the markets around the UK, by time it gets to the counter, it could be 7 to 10 days old already. And that's the problem. And if you do buy a piece of bad fish, you just scrape it in the bin and you don't complain. But if you went and bought, everybody understands what a bad chicken looks like and smells like, because we can understand a bad smell in a chicken. You would take it back, you would complain. So I would start complaining if your fish is poor quality. But 90% of the supermarkets in the UK is not selling fish anyway. So you can't put that complaint in. But you can go into your supermarket and ask, why aren't you opening up our fish? Because we're only landing about 18% at the moment of all UK fish into the UK. We're really struggling to move it on. There's boats, as we speak, tying up because there's no markets. And just to put the French have told the French public to buy and source local producers from your farms to your fruit growers to your fruit and veg and to the fishermen. And the UK, in a way, the UK government needs to say, right, go and buy local milk, go and buy local fish. And if you can't buy local fish, kick up a bit of a stink, and we can get that local fish to your area through the markets and through transport links.
In some ways, wouldn't it be better if every country essentially did do the same? If every country started to say, you know what, we're going to consume whatever we can, seasonal produce from our country, wouldn't that cut down on a lot of the food miles?
Oh, naturally, of course it is. We work closely. Me and Andy are the only ambassadors for Love British Food that kind of concentrate on fish and shellfish, and we've been doing a lot of work with Love British Food since the lockdown, and also I've been working with other areas of the fishing industry to get that fish to that door. You can get it to your door now overnight. There's not much excuses. The prices are pretty reasonable as well because a boat can't land all its catch at the moment. And yeah, I think we've got to look after ourselves. And I think we've got to go seasonal because if say one boat comes into Brixham and just say hypothetically he's got 100 kilo of prime fish on there, but he can only sell 30, he needs to move 70 kilos on to somewhere else. And these fishermen have got to understand that the merchants, the markets need help from the fishermen. I would say to any fisherman, if they end up listening to this blog, start up a Twitter account, start an Instagram app, make yourself aware that you are about, because we're the unseen producers of food in the UK, because the public don't see us because we're always at sea. So we've got to break that barrier down somewhere along the line.
Yeah. Where would you say is the biggest market for British crab? Because it's definitely not Britain, is it?
No, it's not Britain at all. Traditionally, when we were fishing back in the 80s and 90s, all the way through the 90s until probably the early 2000s, it was always Europe. Always Europe. So as I said in the past, I used to steam the Lacrio or the Helen Clare into Cherbourg in the boats that I used to skipper. And there'd be merchants fighting over our crab, absolutely fighting on the quay. And they would try to pay us 5p more a kilo to grab our catch. And our merchant, Francis Letellier, he could push on 100 ton of live crab and more a week into Europe. Then the housewife, I won't say housewife, the households in Europe, their mentality started changing a little bit towards prepping food. So they're probably buying more picked crab meat or more filleted fish. So the UK started looking at other markets, and then China emerged. I've been to China, and you don't realise how big China is until you hit the border and fly to Beijing, and then you realise, wow, what a country, what a big country. So the UK, excuse me, concentrated on China. Now, this is a live market study, so they can pack in Brixham to Beijing in under 30 hours, flying out of Heathrow, flying out of the Midlands, in crates, straight down to the big cities in China. So China was taking all of our crab. It's always been a delicate market because of the political side of things. But China shut about 4 years ago, and it put a glut of crab into Europe, and Europe couldn't even handle it back then. So, like as we speak, on a Saturday, on the 27th of the 6th, there's boats backing up with crab as we speak now. All the store boxes in, I reckon by next week, apart from a few, or it's definitely in the next 10 days, 2 weeks, we're going to have majority of the crab boats tied up in various ports around the UK. China needs to, because it's closed again through deep cleanings, but then it could be a little bit political. But to put it in context, when China was in full flow, there could be 50, 60, 70 tons being flown down there a week. But now, it's a huge market down there. And I know the population is far greater down there, but the rest of the world love our produce. Why don't we? Why don't we?
Where I probably disagree with you a little bit is that I think promoting on health doesn't really help, because I think for the most part, most people eat what's unhealthy. I actually think I'd be promoting how tasty it is, saying how I'd probably go down the opposite way and say it's a tasty delicacy as opposed to a healthy one. I think healthy can be second, but I think tasty needs to come first, I think.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought. Absolutely,
That's just my thought.
Yeah, but no, which does happen is like when me and Andy, certain food festivals are allowed to give out tasters. So what Andy cooks up on stage, through our insurances, we've got Crabstock and Two Smoking Lobsters is got a hygiene rating of 5. And it's the only pop-up seafood restaurant that gets put into middle of fields. We dine 40 a day on the best seafood, the best fresh seafood. And people come in and try and they taste it and they go, why haven't we done this before? And you're right, there is a lot down to taste, but you've got to get them through the door or to buy to understand that the benefits of taste, if you see what I mean.
Do you think that maybe sea fishermen have become too reliant, or even companies who process the product, have they become too reliant on China? The fact that, we're sending it all over there, it's easy, we're sending it live, we're not processing it, it's out of our way, 90 tons a week. I read recently a quick article that said, in 2018, Rick Stein issued a shortage because it was all going to China, and now it's stuck over here because we can't move it. And you think, and also on top of that, the Chinese have been testing it for cadmium, which then they say, we don't want it, for argument's sake. What's the best way around all this, do you think?
Well, yeah, no, Rick did say there was a shortage. He was wandering around Beijing and come across a brown crab in the market down there. I've been around that same market. The cadmium levels, you brought that up. The cadmium levels is a heavy metal, but it's one of the most abundant heavy metals. It's in everything. You pull out a carrot, cadmium's in carrots. It's in the soil, in the ocean. It's absolutely everywhere. For the Chinese use the cadmium. That's the political bit. The cadmium levels are too high, but they've never been too high anywhere else where we export live. And the cadmium, let's clear this a little bit up. Cadmium is only found in the brown meat, which is in the shell, not the white meat. And if you need to fall ill, you probably got to eat about 10 kilos of brown meat a day for years. So there is no
so
issue.
They're using it as a political ball then, really?
Yeah, because trade deals, isn't it? Going back to your initial question, a fishing boat can probably go and land, say, let's just go and pick on 100 kilo. We can all vision 100 kilo straight into a lorry, straight into a poly box and shipped. The market for our crab, an average price of a crab through kind of the last 20 years is, for a hen crab, let's say, is always running around about 180, 220, 250. The peak of beginning of last year and last winter, people were paying £5 a kilo for it. So a fisherman's going to go for that every day. Does he go for 180 or does he go for £5? But that £5, which I've been saying it, and they forget their domestic market is collapsed. There's people trying to sell crab now for 50p, 60p, 70p just to move it on. And it's better off on the bottom. But don't forget, this coronavirus is no fault of any country or any producer. But we've got to figure out how we can break that down. If China opens up again, I do not know. But the fishermen and the merchants and the wholesalers have got to probably think, well, if it doesn't, what do we do? What do we do? And we've got, what's the UK population? Over 60 odd million now, Stelios, isn't it?
Yeah, touching on 70, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no. So we know there's enough people in the UK just to go and have another 1.5 or 2 portions of fish a week. That's what we look at.
I think I've sort of mentioned this. I've mentioned this before to some people, and I had Tom Pickerel on the podcast, who works for Sustainable Tuna Partnerships. I can't remember the exact organisation name. I've had Lauren from MSC. This country relies on the big 5, and that's tuna, prawn, cod, haddock, and salmon. And we've sort of just. This country has just gone down this, this hole of just eating the same produce. And in my view, that can't be sustainable either, because eating the same thing all the time, that's not that, if we're constantly saying, well, actually, we don't want that woof, we don't want the rock salmon, let's all throw that back in. Well, let's just go get the cod. And I think, well, that's just a bit silly, isn't it? We've got, like you say, we've got these shores have got an abundance of seafood. Maybe the schools or someone needs to start teaching about seafood at the school level.
Well, me and Andy, we have gone into schools. After we signed 24 pieces of sheets and declarated this and done this and said, well, I'll like this, we can get into schools. But there is a couple of people that are working with the schools. But say that those big five, how far do I go with this conversation is, well, it's all imported. 70 to 80% of every cod you eat in fish and chip shops around the UK is imported. 80%. Nearly.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is true, and obviously, that's my sort of domain. I quite understand that, and I don't think that's because of price. I think that might have been because of price. I think now it's an abundancy issue. I think that because of the way that the common fisheries policy is, there isn't enough haddock and cod in the North Sea to supply the fish and chip industry. There just isn't. And I think, I was chatting to a guy who is, and he's quite high up in like a big fish importing company. And he said, if fish and chip shops switched from frozen at sea fish and let's say went over to sort of, let's say, British fresh fish, he goes, all you need is maybe 2 to 3% more before the market collapses, because there just wouldn't be enough.
No, I understand it, as I know. That's why I've thrown it in, because I know you work in that environment. But I want to put you under a bit of pressure now.
That's all right.
What is the top white fish land import in the UK? And can you tell me what before COVID? Let's go back into. I know what I got in April. How much cod was landed in that white port in one landing by 2 boats? You're saying there's not enough. So what's the top whitefish port then, Stelios? Takes all the cod and have it?
I want to say like something like Grimsby, but I might be wrong. So
Well, Grimsby is that's where all the import stuff. But Peterhead up in Scotland.
Okay, Peterhead, yeah.
Right. So they're the top whitefish port, the pelagic fish. When those boats are on it, they can catch enough cod and haddock to feed the fish and chip shops in the UK for a month. Where does that fish go? Gets exported, because we're bringing the imports in. You touched on MSC, Marine Steward Council. A lot of people get confused over that title, but it means worldwide. It doesn't mean UK. And I think MSC should narrow their searches down to say, right, we got because hake's just MSC now. Which has been for a while. So sardines or herring, and what you want to do. And there's not
British
many.
Hake's amazing. British hake is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what a fish! What a fish! The majority of it's caught down in like the Western Approaches by some fantastic boats down there. They've worked hard to keep the NSC, but it doesn't take much to lose it. You got to work hard to keep that title. But when But when me and Andy have stood up on stage, this year would have been our busiest year. We were booked in for 28 shows this year, and they're all slowly getting cancelled. We might have the opportunity at the back end of the year. But me and Andy, we stand in the middle of the country talking about fish and shellfish. And you mention MSC and nobody knows what it is. They don't know what the Seafish Authority is. They don't. There's a real lack of information to follow up on that.
I'd argue, and I've argued that point many times, but to look at it from the other side, I'd put you in any country where there's a strong presence of any food. Do people know where that organisation is and what it is? I don't think they do. If you're in America and they're doing stone crabs, do people know what the Stone Crab Association of wherever is? I don't think they do. I think they just want to eat the product and enjoy it. Yes. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these groups, they're all there trying to get us to eat more seafood or fish or cow, whatever the organization is. But in the end, they all start to look after their own interests instead of actually doing what their main focus is, which is actually to get people eating more of that product they defend. You know, and you know, so I think that, you know, for me, I think that, you know, maybe Seafish should be saying to people, you know, look at all this fish you have in the UK. It's abundant. There's lots of hake. There's lots of this. There's lots of that. You know, one of my customers in Whitby, the Magpie Cafe, they probably have at any one time 20 fish on the menu.
Yeah.
You know, and don't get me wrong, cod and haddock is their main seller, but they will have a lot of other items. But that can't be emulated everywhere.
No, but that, you know, I would say most fish and chip shops would love to put a battered gurnard on there. But it's not the fish and chip shops' fault that they're not selling it. It's because what does the public know what that gurnard is? You know, it's so that, you know, and as a business, you've got to you've got to make money. And if you can't make money by selling 10 portions of gurnard today, you're not going to put it on the menu. We know Whitby quite well. My cousins had 2 boats built up at Parco Marine, and we've been in that fish and chip shop quite a few times, like, you know. So, but that's where it comes down to making people aware of what we got around our water. There's about 118 species, you know, and the rest of the world understands them apart from us. So, you know, how long can one outlet try to move? You know, look at the effort was put on mackerel bats, you know, and it's not dropped away now. So it's a constant uphill struggle. I won't say battle, but it's a constant uphill struggle. And there's too many people involved in our industry. It's given out different messages of why you should eat it or why you shouldn't eat it. And I think we need to just go right back to basics and say, it tastes good. It's good for your health. Go source it. Just ask when, where, and who. And then we've all got recipe books. Open up a book and just have a little bit of play. You're not going to lose anything by having a go, are you?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was wondering is, how sustainable is crab, and what lengths the fishermen, processors, etc. go to? Because I read on the Marine Conservation Society website that sort of like brown crab comes from 2, which is a very good green rating, and it goes to 4, which is quite a bad red rating. And how does it fluctuate? You know, how do you make sure it's sustainable?
Well, I think where they probably got their figures from is obviously when people was spending £4 or £5 a kilo buying a crab, the boats got greedy, and I will say they got greedy and chucked out more pots. Sustainability side of crab is still good, and it's getting better because of the market's falling down a little bit. There's obviously there's a minimum landing size. The breeding process of a crab, they molt, so they molt like a snake. So when it's soft, like now, nobody's keeping, say, 1 clawed crab. They're putting them back in the water. A female crab can produce up to 300,000 to 400,000 eggs with a very good success rate. Inside, inside the 3 mile limit, our coastline is divided into 3, 6, and 12. We got the UK has got total control up to the 6, but then it gets a little bit washed between the 6 and the 12, and we're trying to get back to the 12. When we joined the EU in the 70s, we gave that away. We need to get that back. There's a trap. There's a minimum. There's a trap inside of every pot. If it's a parlour or an inkwell, it lets juveniles out. And then obviously the crews are so knowledgeable. They would know if it's hitting the minimum landing size. If it's undersized by 0.5 mil, it goes back. There's measures all over it. If it's soft and they've changed their shell, or if it's buried, the UK has a lobster berry ban in, and also there's not a ban on landing buried crab, but a fisherman, a crew, would never keep it. Yeah. So that comes back. So where they probably got their figures from was a couple of years ago when there was huge pressure on the industry. And I think, I'm not going to speak out of turn if fishermen's going to listen to this, instead of having 2,000 pots per boat, reduce it down to 1,400. We used to make a living in the 90s and 80s with 700 pots. I know the expense of fuel and the running costs are dear, but chucking out thousands and thousands and thousands of pots is not the answer to keep this industry going. You need to fish. And don't forget, the other quick thing is as well, a crab's got to physically crawl into that pot. It doesn't get dragged into the pot, so it's got to go in there on its own will. So, and then we only fish in certain areas anyway. And the crab is abundant. There's plenty of crab out there.
Mm. So, if we talk about spider crab for a moment, that's not really sold over here, isn't it? It goes to nice restaurants or nice fishmongers, but for the most part, spider crab goes to France and Spain. Is that right?
I know. What are we doing? What are we doing? Not eating spider crabs. I just don't get it. Me and Andy, we concentrate on spider crabs. The biggest, when you get our platter at our restaurant, the most prominent species on there is that spider crab. We put a whole big clump of spider crab in its shell, right in the cook. We haven't got plates. We've got gastro trays. Right? Okay. It's on there. And you're right. It's a delicacy in Europe. You know, a family would sit down and munch on 4 or 5 spider crabs, and more so than a piece of beef and lamb. And the meat is so sweet. It's like there's a fiddler crab or velvet crab. It's not the crab that you catch with bacon on the side of the wall. That's a green crab, but they're really good to eat. You know, you could, instead of chucking them back, they're a bit of a pest. You know, you can cook them up in a broth, to a flavoured Thai broth, and cook them up and eat them. But there's a little velvet crab that we catch, which goes to Europe. And when we go into schools and with children, all this lot, and when we have passed 24 pieces of paperwork and the HACCPs and the insurances, we get them to try the velvet crab. I call it the Roundtree of the crab world. The meat is just so sweet. Then it's a spider crab. The edible brown crab, white meat, is brilliant. But the spider crab is so good, and I can't get my head around why we don't eat them. And when we get 80 or 90 customers over a weekend in the middle of a field in Nottingham, and the crab that's cleaned right out to its shell is that spider crab. People cannot believe how good they are. So I don't know. I really don't know.
I think when we met up together, I told you that I love all seafood, but the one crab that really disappointed me was soft shell crab. I don't know. I don't know. It was fried. It was breaded or whatever. It was in a burger. It was in like a tempura batter. But I don't know. Yeah. I just felt it was a bit. I don't know. There was no real flavour to it.
But don't forget, that's not a UK caught species.
No, it's not. Is that blue crab, that one?
Sorry, Stadios?
Is that blue crab?
No. I think it is a breed of crab. I don't really know too much about the soft shell crab. I've eaten it at festivals. There's a guy that's a big advocate for them and moves them around. Funny enough, the first time I ever even had a soft shell crab was with Heston Blumenthal. I was on one of his programs, Fantastic Foods, when it was filmed in Brixham. It was a weird and wonderful day on his take on flavours and tastes, and he had soft shell crabs on there, and I was thinking, Heston, avoid that. I don't think that's going to fit your remit. Yeah. So
it's fair to say that we mentioned supermarkets when we were setting up, and I think you might have mentioned it earlier as well, but it's fair to say that supermarkets opened their own fishmongers, and I'd say that they probably sped up the decline of fishmongers on the high street. I wouldn't say they were solely responsible, but I'd argue that they helped. Now they're getting rid of fishmongers. What do you propose there? Because surely they're just going to have, again, the big 5 on the shelf wrapped in plastic. What do you suggest?
Well, I've always been, I've always spoken about supermarkets and what role they have in our society. by all means, they fit into our society. They got a place into our society. But if they want to go down and put a fish counter in, in the middle of the country, do it properly, do it correct, because the quickest way to put anybody off any food is poor quality. And that's the bit they could not get right, because all the intentions were brilliant for them to do that. But I won't mention any of the names, but one crowd last year scrapped 300 counters. Now, I know for a fact I went down the apprenticeship route. I used to do fish and shellfish apprenticeships for Seafish for an independent company out of London. And we did have a bit under one of the supermarkets. And one lad says the counter staff is given 2 weeks training. And I pulled them up and pulled some of these supermarkets up in conferences when I'm keynote speaker. And how can you put somebody to sell UK or seafood when they get 2 weeks training? Then all of a sudden, Mary on tin beans is off sick, and they're pulled off of that, and they've got to load up the shelves of tins. So that I think they saw it as a quick buck, a service, but they've done it completely wrong. And they've used this COVID and used the society, used other aspects to scrap it. It's because they never put the effort in. Now, my thinking, and it's only my thoughts, I've put it to a few people. We have a brilliant outlet system with supermarkets throughout the whole of the UK. Now, we need to link into them properly somehow. Under proper guidance, they kind of tend to work out of guidance anyway. But I think we've got an opportunity as an industry and everybody connected to our industry to phone up the big five, sit down with them and say, right, you've got a fish counter there. You've got all the facilities to store the fish, to hold the fish, to sell the fish. And I think we've got to break away from their traditional transport links and their hubs and put a separate transport link in. Transport needs to start moving again. And trial it in one area, pick three different types of named supermarkets and trial it somewhere along the line. Because this COVID's going to be around for a long time. It's not going to be a quick fix. But I think we got to start discussions with them and say, right, let's open up your fish counter. Let's trial it for a month. Let's let the industry support that 1 or 5 fish counters. I know we're spread thinly, and I know fishermen have got to concentrate on their mortgage of their boats. But there's plenty of people in the UK that love our industry, love what we catch, and maybe we can try to set it up on a small scale thing. And hopefully over years, with the infrastructure already there for the public, we might be able to build on it over the next 4, 5 years, 10 years, or however long it takes to get our products to the consumer. So my thoughts on supermarkets are, I think we've got to talk to them and utilise them.
Maybe there's a way that they can do like a shared sort of system where a fishmonger can rent the space and or just give like a bit of a profit shared bonus or something to the supermarket.
Yeah. There's got to be a way around it, because it's there ready to go, isn't it? It just needs somebody to have a look at it and take it on and work towards the industry and get one boat's 100 kilo to 2 outlets in the Midlands, and it's all gone. And I think we got to somehow look at that,
Is there a skill shortage? Is there a lot of fishmongers that are out of work, let's say, or?
Well, no, I think they're all pretty well busy. When the shutdown happened, like most businesses, the country changed overnight. It was just, the Bricks and Crab Company on that particular Monday, we had massive sales. Tuesday, we was down by 90% overnight, and that's just like every other business. The hospitality, I feel for them. As you know, my missus is a head chef, and they're in talks now to reopen on July the 4th. So everybody had to rally around, and after a week and a half throughout the lockdown, I managed to get through Seafish my critical pass. And also through the NFU, I do a lot with the National Farmers Union on another project. And I sat down with the owner of the Brixton Crab Company, and he says, "What do we do? What do we do?" And I says, "Right, let's just look at different avenues." And the fishmongers kind of opened up pretty quickly. So then we just started dealing with fishmongers. Then we started doing fish boxes at home, and so certain businesses are moving forward, but we can't move to the rate of what people's kind of catching. So the fishmongers, I think, are quite good. Yes, there's always going to be a skill set shortage, naturally, but there is, with the colleges and the universities and the campuses and all that lot shut, and so there's no courses going on. You can go on and do a filleting course and a filleting course. But we need those people, and if people are listening to this and they want to change a direction and move into an industry that's really exciting and dynamic, I would just look up and become a fishmonger. You'll never go wrong.
I think, well, just thinking, you talk about different markets. I was just looking at the notes we made earlier. I was thinking, like, one of the downsides for, let's say, a UK fishmonger or a restaurateur who is now trying to put all these things on the menu, great seafood, it's all at a very good price. But then if the market's open in China and Europe again, and everyone says, well, let's just supply over there because it's easy and we're getting more money for it, that sort of removes the incentives again, doesn't it?
Well, I would hope that the industry won't go back to that. I would hope there be a percentage of fishermen that will carry on the good work they're doing. There's one boat, or I won't mention boats again or names because I'll be here for hours, but there's one guy, he's got his own boat in Brixham. He's took the initiative and he has pushed so hard, and he does, with his social media accounts, he set up a social distancing on a pontoon. He lets the public know what he's coming back in with, and he's created his own little industry, and he sells out every single time. And he's in. You would hope other entrepreneurs, I would call him an entrepreneur, and other people around the UK would carry on like that instead of sticking it on the market and not knowing where it's going. So you would hope there would be a percentage that would carry on, because yet again, as we said earlier, I think this virus is here for a long, long time. And, in the other markets are not going to be as strong because, the public in China is just equally as scared of moving around. And I think they got their little bit of a second spike. So I would try to get people like him to carry on and support him because he's doing a brilliant job.
It's obviously, we have got COVID, but we've also got Brexit that's looming. What are your fears in that respect?
Well, I read an article this morning. December 31st is still happening. That's when we're supposed to come out. It's been really quiet on the front of the fishing side, but I did briefly read something a couple of days ago that it's so difficult to talk about Brexit. I think if we had a normal year, I think the industry would be still focused on getting that 12-mile limit, get our quotas back. We lost so many quotas. Where we're having difficulties now with EU boats in our waters now. We can't police it. We can't stop it. There was an incident up in off a limited coast not so while back where a Spanish boat is trying to foul props of British boats. We've had so much trouble with being in the EU with waters, and they're squabbling over the same fish. There's plenty out there, but they can see the benefits of being in our waters. And I would hope that in the background they've been steadily working towards a resolve, but everybody's focus has been on this COVID-19, and I think that it's been washed. So hopefully things might start getting back on track, and we can get back to where we need to be with the industry, with our territorial borders and our quotas that we lose,
Yeah, and looking about, one thing I really like about seafood and fish, I love the fact that it's it's unadulterated, it's not messed around with. There is a few things, obviously, for example, you can get breaded scampi that's usually mixed with something else, but that's obviously on the cheaper end of the market. But I read about a company, it was an article from late 2019, and there's a company probably in your hometown, and they were sending crab to Vietnam to get processed because they were saying that there was a shortage in processing skills. What do you sort of think about that? Do you think, that needs to sort of stop, or do you need to be just a bit clearer?
Well, you've done your research. You're trying to put me into a real awkward situation with that. That was all down. I'm not going to say no. That was nothing to do with shortage. That was all to do with financial. It was all to do with money. So that's all it is. That's all it was. It was.
But surely, if that's the case,
it was cheaper to pick it down there and ship it there and ship it back than it was to pick it in the UK.
And if that's the case, though,
and they've been caught with their trousers down there.
And I assume you're right because you know the industry and you know probably who it is that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if that's right, that will put off consumers, won't it? Because that loses that sort of the whole, if we're going to say the Britishness or the locality or everything that we're trying to sell that product as, that company has took a few cheats and then trying to then come back and sell it as, I read in the article that it says that sometimes some of the product was being mixed with local fish. Well, local fish in Vietnam is probably, catfish or something. So it makes you wonder why they do that. Aside from, like you say, making more money.
Well, it's money, isn't it? It's all down to money. Every business is looking to, how can we maximize that yield? How can we add value, but not by putting value at the product? It's like, and why mess about with such a brilliant product in the first place? And that's what I can't get my head around, really. We do what we do at the company, and that's all. But we're not, Mike is not. We're not going to take he doesn't want to take the world over. He just wants to produce quality. And I think if we can get back to that, quality. If we walked into an antique shop or an auction, quality, you watch it on telly, quality always sells. And that's what you got to produce in the food world. It doesn't make a difference if there's a farmer producing the best cheddar or the best brie. He takes passion over producing it. And that's what shines through any product, the care and the duty towards it. So, but yeah.
No, I massively agree. And what's great about what's great about the seafood that you guys are doing, or at least involved with, is that if it's lobster, if it's crab, if it's for argument, just see it's already come cooked. You can have like you can have a party, have friends round, and there's no preparation, is there really?
No, that's exactly right. It's that's what I'm saying is if people just go on to your search engines, type in home deliveries, fish home deliveries, or fishmongers. I think you can find your local fishmonger. There's a directory called Find a Fisherman, findafisherman.co.uk, I think. Type in there and you'll be surprised how close your fishmonger is. And he will be able to answer. And don't forget, he will prep whatever you want. So if you see a hoe bass or, hoe gurnard, he will talk you through it because that's what he does. And he will prep it for you, and he will give you tips how to cook. And so I would seriously search it. But yeah, like when we do our Crabstock and Two Smoking Lobsters, everything's in its shell.
Yeah.
Because we want people to experience how to break into this. And Andy in the front of the house. Well, there's only 5 of us that run it. They're on hand, but when I do about 5 minutes before they eat, as the platters are going out, I tell them where that spider crab's from, the name of the boat, the brown crab, where the oysters are from, where the mussels are from, where the scallops are from, where everything's from. And it's all within 10 miles of where I'm sat here in Tall Bay. And if I go up to Norfolk, we've been on Sandringham Queen's Estate for 4 or 5 years on the trot now. And I try to support everybody out of Norfolk and buy their produce, buy their crab, their whelks, their oysters, their mussels from Brancaster to Wells next to the sea, and try to link, the restaurant is to try to link local people to their local produce. I would never dare go all the way to Sandringham from the south coast with a brown crab in the van.
No.
I'd go up and stuff I can't get. And that's what the restaurant's all about, is just breaking it back down to basics really. Well, when we open up, you'll have to come. We've just lost,
no, definitely.
we've lost this year. We've had to, the ones that we were booked into, we've had to scrap through this, which is a shame. We was nearly booked up fully as well.
Well, I think what would be amazing is if like there was a map of the UK and they showed us what was abundant in that locality, because I think then, and with recipes and all that, maybe that's an idea for you and Andy.
Well, funny, we have been working, and we have got a book being put together called Catch, Cook and Eat. But it's been trouble is we're not professional people, and we're trying to put this. It's going to be online, so it will be through Amazon. I think at $1.99. So the first one's nearly ready, and Andy keeps saying, once it's out, we'll be ready to do iPad signings. But we're just through this period. We're just struggling. So we have got a cookbook. We've got about 3 or 4 drafted, and it'll all be. The first one's all about shellfish, then we'll hit flatfish, then we'll hit roundfish. But what I side of the book is Andy's recipes, because his record in 45 minutes is 7 recipes.
Wow.
On stage, just show how easy it is.
Yeah.
And my job is to say that, go and eat it, go and source it, and go and eat it. But just on that, just on a few stats. And this is from 1990 to 2018. In 1990, there was 11,000 boats in the UK licensed to fish.
Wow.
In 2018, we've just dipped under 6,000 boats. And that's an average of 3 boats per week being lost through various things. And back in 1990, we exported 53% of our product. But in 2018, we import now 78% of foreign fish, shellfish. You mentioned prawns. Hundreds of thousands of tons of prawns are imported into the UK, all farmed. And then we've got to export all ours. Those boys that catch Dublin blade prawns or langoustines, it's the same species, export it because people don't eat it. You mentioned scampi. What is scampi? It used to be langoustine tails, didn't it? And it went to monkfish. Then langoustines has got a good price. Monk's got a good. I don't even know what's in scampi now. I wouldn't even have a clue. So we are on a downward spiral of our industry, and everybody that takes a boat to sea, everybody that fillets a fish, everybody that tries a van, every chef, every future chef, every college that I work with love fish. We just got to transfer that over into the UK public somewhere along the line.
It's amazing because we touched on it earlier when we were setting up. Like in America, you can go to a restaurant, especially probably in New England, let's say, and you can get like all you can eat crabs and lobster, and you'll pay $30 a head or $40, but in the UK, I really can't think of a restaurant that is solely focused on crab you got Burger and Lobster, which is burger and lobster, but there's no lobster restaurant where you only go to get lobster, or we don't seem to have that in the UK.
No, we don't. I don't know that. That's why we, through Crabstock and Two Smoking Lobsters, that's what we're trying to achieve. If I can set Sarah up, I've got a couple of locations to put that like permanently, and we just concentrate on what we concentrate. But then, you mentioned Burger and Lobster. That's a Canadian company. It's Canadian lobsters, so they won't even entertain and put one native in their restaurants.
Really?
But the problem, but with they hold a Canadian lobster. Whilst you've touched on it, native lobsters now are in abundance. They're pretty cheap. They taste a little bit different to the New England lobsters. But what the New England lobsters got is they got this gaffamia. They've got this bacteria of shell disease. And it's against the law in the UK to hold them in any open water system tank. We're catching them now in our waters. And it is pretty serious because it's simple to explain why. It's like the American signal crayfish. It's hit our water, it's our fresh water system, and it's decimated the natives. They've got the same disease. So I know they've got to make a living, but we export our lobsters. Imported lobsters come in to fill the demand, and it's overpriced. That's all it is. It's always price. It's always money. We can get more money in Portugal for our lobsters than we can in a London restaurant. Now we've got to transfer that over to make money in London or the big cities and not go to Portugal. And every one native sowed is one less Canadian sowed.
Yeah.
But then it's to 50 or £1 a kilo, as little as that. And if I've dealt with London restaurants for 10 years now, and I can sow up there, and I'd say just if you want more of a footfall, just source local produce. Don't mess about by importing it. But then we've got to think about that because we export to the rest of the world. So it's yin and yang, isn't there? On what do we try to keep back and what do we need to export?
I'm not being funny, but I see this a lot in the wheat industry, that they'll say, oh, well, people want our wheat because it's good. And, and they give us a bit more than what the British will. I think to tell farmers and processors of any product, only sell to the UK. Oh, and you're going to get less money for it. That, you've got to be a real patriot to want to do that, because they are, I'm not being funny. They're all in business.
Yes.
So, unless, and this is probably a pie in the sky idea, unless the government actually do say, look, you know what, we want people in the UK to eat more seafood. Let's do a subsidy, and maybe that's probably the only way around it. So you can not only sell it to the UK and still make money, but you can sell it abroad and still make money. Then it probably comes down to an abundance issue.
Yeah. It's a very, we could talk about this all day about import and exporting. Yes, I'm probably a little bit biased because in my career, I've seen a lot and experienced a lot on our waters of people not coming home, and it just makes, I enjoy what I do. I don't see this as a task to get people to eat UK public. I think it's an honour that I can do what I do. And every time I stand up on stage, I don't stand up there as Adrian Bartlett. I don't stand up there as the Crabstock Boys. I stand up there representing the industry. And I've always saw that, and I'll always honour that, because it's not a pleasant industry to be in when it goes wrong, but it's such an enjoyable industry when it's always right. And I think my thoughts on this virus, this worldwide virus, there's a lot of people sat in offices, there's a lot of people sat in rooms refiguring out how they keep their businesses going.
Yeah.
And I think the simple fact is start at home first, and then when things start easing, yes, go for the export market, but please keep a little bit back for the domestic market as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is a difficult one.
I tell you what, though, mate, I'm not even just saying this because you're here. I think I might have texted you, but that crab you gave me, that was like absolutely stunning. Like, if everybody tried that, it was clean, it was white, there was some amazing brown meat in there. I mean, if everybody tried that with a squeeze of lemon on it, does it need anything else? Does it need salt? Does it need chili? And it's just lemon. Yeah.
Well, you can do a bit of a flavouring for it, but don't use strong flavours of crab because it's quite a delicate meat. But you could do your crab meats. But no, thanks for that. We work really, really hard on our process over there in how our process is. The last pot potted is equally as good as the first pot potted. And if that's 10 pots, 100 pots, or whatever, it's and it goes back to what we were saying earlier. It is quality. And I brought a cut of crab home yesterday. I got to do one of the festivals that I'm working with is Flavour Fest down in Plymouth this year, but that's been cancelled, and also the Seafood Festival has been cancelled in Plymouth. So they want me to do a virtual. With me and Andy's doing more virtual festivals at the moment than we've ever done before. just to keep our name alive. So I got to go and pick a cut of crab about 1 o'clock today, and I'll eat it all.
Well, well, look, on that note, I'm going to let you crack on. Where can people find you on social media if they want to follow you?
Well, it's just the Crabstock Boys, really. Just type in Crabstock Festivals or Crabstock Boys, Randy's Kitchen, and they will link up to our Facebook. We're not really, we're not social media addicts, but we are on there. I don't put stuff on there if it's not needed. I don't think I'll put a Twitter out for about a month now, but because you just. I've always said social media is absolutely brilliant, but it only lasts for about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Because you just go through so fast. So we are pretty clever on what we do.
Yeah.
And keep an eye out when we're in kind of your area. There's a lot happening in my side with other aspects that's happening. I'm going down a route now of emissions and environment with my new role with Ecomotus Pro, which is a system that we're putting on fishing vessels and cars to reduce the carbon footprint through the industry. The first, we're hoping that we can get the UK as the first carbon neutral fishing fleet in the world. So we're working really, really hard on that, which is going forward nicely. And yeah, again, if anybody wants me and Andy to do any kind of festivals or private or virtual, just follow the links and drop us an email, and we're gladly show up.
Fantastic.
And we're cheap. We're cheaper than the big boys, I tell you.
Well, I don't know. I didn't want to say anything, but you and Andy ain't so skinny, really. You're both big boys.
No, we're not. No. Like you said that, and you're on the other side of the laptop.
I can hide when I'm behind a computer screen, can't I? So
we've been saying it is healthy. It is really, really healthy. I'm a really good fit 19 stone.
Well, look, mate. On that note, we will talk again soon. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Stereos.